Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, it's Vandy Ezzo back in the card fight Vanguard deck profile. If you guys enjoy, don't like, comment, subscribe, and donate to the Patreon. And let's get one started. Today we have Link Joker, Star-vaders. So, Star-vader's got the shit end of the stick in V collection. What I mean by that, I'm not saying any of the Star-vader cards are particularly bad. I mean, yes, I hate the grade 1 and 2, and I like the grade 3. But what I mean by that they got the shit end of this deck, I mean, literally every reverse deck has a counter to Star-vaders because they either have a ability that nukes their own rear guard, so unless Star-vader locks enough of them, they don't do anything, or they have an ability that activates when their units are unlocked. So the timing with Star-vaders and their skills also is a thing. But then shit like Luke here, who just gives +3 to your front row during each player's turns based on the number of lock cards you have, we can all understand why Star-vaders got the shit end of the stick here. Does that mean Star-vaders are bad? No. Also, Ezzo gave them a big middle finger, which I'm happy about. But does that mean they're bad? No. Does it mean they are particularly good and probably going to be good into the meta? No, because Bushy just made sure that if Star-vaders ever get good in the meta, they have plenty of countermeasures to prevent this. So let's go ahead and get this deck profile started, shall we? First up, we have our starter in Luminary of Ionization, Grubridge, 6k base, 10k shield, grade 0 boost, auto when it's wrote upon, draw a card. Then if your opponent's Vanguard's greater 1 or greater, you get a quick shield, take it to your hand. Standard starter ability, that's just special about it, you get a draw, you get a quick shield. This is pretty much our starter because we don't have a Star-vader starter, and let's be fair, we got this, like, this guy is kind of Star-vader-esque, like, isn't that a horn? No, it's not a horn, but like, let's be fair. This thing is most likely a Star-vader, and it just didn't want to be called a Star-vader because Bushy didn't want to spoil it in advance that we would be getting Star-vaders. So, Grubridge, starter option. I mean, you could run any starter you want, but most likely it's going to be Grubridge if you want to keep that Star-vader-esque theme. And then we have our trickle lineup. 4 copies of Flowers and Vacuum, Cosmo, Wreath. Grade 0, boost, 0 shield, 5k base, draw trigger, continue Sentinel, 4 Sentinels in your deck. Auto guard when when placed, discard a card from your hand, and one of yours cannot be into the battle. Okay, I want to hear it from no one that there isn't a reason to run draws. Okay, maybe 12 crit Star-vader is meta. I don't know. I'm not going to try that because I wouldn't be comfortable trying that. But draw BGs, in my opinion, are better than the crit Sentinel in this sense, in this deck. I'm not saying draw triggers are always better than crit Sentinels, but I say it here because all of the Star-vaders either involve a skill that retires a rear guard, so you need the draw trigger to replace that, or discards a hand card, which you also need a draw trigger to replace that. So, like, you know, Flowers and the only one that doesn't is Chaos Breaker, but let's be fair, how often are you actually going to sit on Chaos Breaker nowadays? I mean, it's still a good card to sit on. I would sit on it, but what I've heard from everyone with Nebula Lord, I'm assuming no one's going to sit on Chaos Breaker besides me and a handful of others. Either way, Cosmo Wreath is the card that you want to use to plus into your hand when, you know, half your abilities are killing your own board and retiring your own hand. So, 4 copies of Cosmo Wreath because you do need draws, and the PG is helpful. 8 crits and Asteroid Wolf and Axon Dragon. My reasoning for this is all of your Star-vader units all your Star-vaders, meaning grade 3s, have a way of giving power and a huge amount of them. I mean, Nebula is the only one that actually shares with the rear guards. Let's be fair, you can call Chaos or Infinite 0 to the front or rear guard circles, they immediately get like big buffs. So, yeah, we need the draw triggers just to get the hand cards, but then we already have the 8 crit to where you just need to run Force 2 and then your big boys can hit over them really easily. So, 4 of each. And then we have 4 heal triggers and Lady Healer of the Torn World. I should not have to say by now of what my beef with Heal Guardians is, but or why I don't learn Heal Guardians. But if I need to say it, from now on, I'm just going to say they go against my playstyle, and if you want to know more, go to my videos from like 2 to 3 weeks ago, and you'll probably get a more defiant answer. But as I don't feel like explaining it for like the 20th time now, because apparently people can't get that in their heads, 4 of this heal. On to grade 1s. 2 copies of Manipulator of the Void. Grade 1, boost, 10k shield, 8k base, auto Vanguard. When it attacks or the attack get boosted, hits a Vanguard, put a card from your hand as a rear guard circle as a locked card, draw a card, and the locked card cannot do anything. They are locked and unlocked and turned face up at stand during the owner's end phase. Now, yes, we do have enough Star-vaders to run a full Star-vader build. This is the one deck I'm not going to advocate for that for. And even then, everything else in this deck is a Star-vader minus the triggers in this. The reason why this is here is because I remember distinctly when I first built Star-vaders with Chaos, you know, where there was only 3 Star-vaders back in V, I ran this card because, you know, half the time people will take the first Vanguard attack because it physically cannot kill them, and normally people use at least 1 counterblast if they choose. Most decks will use 1 counterblast, or like most decks I used to see would use 1 counterblast during their first grade 2 turn. So obviously, or their grade 2 turn. So obviously, Manipulator board made sense to run. And it was really good because I could literally just call a Chaos Breaker as a locked card, draw a card, boom, it gets unlocked. Oh, okay, hello, you know, now I have a grade 3 to swing at your grade 2 next turn. So, like, or just had setup in general and allowed me to get a board and a hand card for free. So all around, Manipulator the Void, really good. It's a on boost, it's an on hit. All around, this thing's actually good. I would run it at 4 if I didn't already have other Star-vaders, and you do need Star-vaders for the deck, so 2 of Manipulator the Void. 2 of the grade 1 I Hail With My Living Soul. Mana Shot Star-vader Neon. Grade 1 boost, 10k shield, 8k base, auto drop at the start of your battle phase. Counterblast 1 and call to rearguard circle the same column as your opponent's locked card. I always forget that it has to be a locked card, so which is why I literally never use it. I remember the test game I had with this, it stayed and dropped the entirety of the game because I never used it right, because everything else was like, I always called my units to the column that had a lock card rather than the one that didn't. And then auto rear at the end of your opponent's turn. If your opponent's lock card was unlocked during the turn, bind it. It is mandatory. Okay, thankfully it's at the end of their turn. So if you just do a bunch of fuckery with chaos, and then yeah, you could technically leave them without any locked cards. But let's be fair, this is Star-vader. Anything that isn't on chaos, half the time you're gonna have to leave a card locked. Which means unless you Omega lock it, please Glendios do that so there's reason to run this. It is effectively useless because afterwards it kills itself. And then you can't get it back because it goes to bind zone. You run this solely because of the Star-vader name. Getting into the drop and getting out via Counterblast in a deck that doesn't have that many counter chargers, at least in my memory they don't, isn't that good. And then in Premium, they hit Zinc before this. So there is no good reason for this thing to exist in my opinion. Is it good in Premium? Maybe. I really don't know. And frankly, I don't care because after they got rid of Zinc, I kind of ruined my reason of running Star-vaders. So 2 of Neon, because I have faith in him. But every time I play this deck, that faith in him slowly diminishes. You're running for the Star-vader name and nothing else. 4 copies of Star-vader, Craving Claw, 8k base, 10k shield, grade 1 with boost. Okay, we all know this card, but now if you've played Star-vaders at all, you've probably run this at 4, but in case you don't know and you're new to Star-vaders, Auto Vanderay, when the attack or the attack it boosted hits a Vanguard, look at top 5, reveal to 1 Star-vader and its card name from among them, put it to your hand and shuffle your deck. Act Rearguard if your opponent's Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater, shove it to soul, choose up to 1 of your opponent's lock cards, unlock it. If you unlock the card, choose an opponent's Rearguard and other than the unlocked card and lock it. Okay, so that first ability automatically really good in this. The main reason why you run this at 4, regardless of what Star-vader deck you're building, if you have Star-vaders and your main grade 3 is a Star-vader, you run this at 4 because it can search the grade 3 for free and doesn't make you discard or counterblast or soul blast or anything. It adds on hit pressure, it searches. But then the other ability is mainly focused for chaos because if you don't know, Nebula doesn't need this at all. Infinite Zero doesn't need this at all, minus the first skill, obviously. But the second skill is made for chaos because chaos activates when your opponent's unit is unlocked. So instead of waiting for your opponent's turn to come around for you to unlock and then use chaos skill, use it during your turn, unlock, and then use chaos skill. Well, that's the point of Craving Claw, and it does switch the lock around, so that's really good. So if they ever make more cards that focus on when your opponent's card is unlocked, then Craving Claw will show more use. But for right now, you only really need that second skill if you're running chaos or if you just really want that soul because, you know, I can see Nebula using this just because Nebula does cost soul. So 4 of Craving Claw. Next up, we have 4 copies of our last grade 1 and our main grade 1, or main grade 1 ride target, because in my opinion, this is your main grade 1. 4 copies of Prison Gate Star-vader Palladium. Grade 1 boost, 10k shield, 8k base. Auto one's road upon may call it to rearguard. The most simple skill, and yet the skill that literally does the least for me because every card I run that has that skill never gets on my Vanguard circle without me having to actively try hard to do so. And when I mean actively try hard, I mean mulligan 95% of my entire hand just to get it. If I have a grade 1 in hand, half the time it's not this, so I have to mulligan everything back that isn't the main grade 3 and then pray to God I draw into it. And then auto rear when your opponent's locked card is unlocked, counterblast 1 and retire this unit, and your opponent looks at the top card of their deck and puts it on an open rearguard circle as locked. Downside, it only works on open rearguard circle, so if they filled up their board beforehand and they unlocked, that doesn't do you much good. And then, but at the same time, you could just combo this with chaos, use chaos skill, kill the unlocked card, do your skill from chaos, and then use this thing's skill because it's still in the same timing, counterblast 1, kill itself, call that locked card back. So all around, Palladium's really good, can get you a relock, can do something when it's rode upon, so it's a good grade 1 ride target, and it's just really helpful in the deck. And it does have like a semi-cool looking art, so I give it a 4 because it does actually do something useful. Then we go back to the useless cards. 3 copies of Unrivaled Star-vader Radon. I classify them as useless because every time I've used them, they have never proven helpful once. Partially because of my own stupidity, but also partially because they're just pure useless. Like, I ran this thing at 4 at some point, and it never showed up at all. It was the card that showed up the least. Anyways, Radon over here, 10k base, grade 2, intercept, 5k short. I do love its art, but I hate the skill that they gave it. Auto drop, if your soul has 1 or less cards, the soul blast is reduced by 1. At the start of your battle phase, soul blast 1 and call this card to a rearguard circle in the same column as your rearguard Star-vader and its card name. And auto rear, when this unit attacks until end of battle, when your opponent will call cards from their hand to guard circle, they must call 2 or more at the same time. At the end of the battle behind this unit, it is a mandatory effect. Cool, okay, so regardless of what they have, regardless if their board is locked or not, I do like that it forces 2 or more cards out regardless because it doesn't have a condition. Downside is it is a forced condition, which means that they don't have to guard, they don't have to, and then they still bind this unit, which sucks. But it's a free call during battle phase if you have 1 or less soul, I guess. Is that a reason to run this? Maybe, like, yeah, the 2 other grade 3s that aren't chaos do nuke hand cards. So I guess there's a valid reason to run this, right? Yeah, no, maybe, I don't know. Love the art, really do. I think this art's a banger, but fuck the second half of that skill. Let's be honest, I would rather take a banned finisher than this. I'd rather have Zinc back at like half the skill, but over this thing, honestly. Like, this thing is okay. Not horrible, despite what this is definitely better than this, but 3 of, I guess. You run it for the name as well, but at least the first skill is better. Then we have 4 copies of actual good grade 2s. Bisection, Star-vader, Zirconium. Good art, actual good skill. Grade 2, intercept, 5k shield, 10k base. Auto Vander rear when placed. If you have a Vanguard Star-vader and its card name, counterblast 1. Your opponent looks at the top card of their deck and puts as an open rearguard circle as locked. And if that locked card was put in the back row, you draw a card and get +10 for the turn. Okay, if you're wondering why people will put it in the back row, if you put it in the front row, you are losing out on an attack. Like, then this is for people who are new to Vanguard. You're losing out onto an attack. And yeah, if you're playing Excel, it's not as bad because you're just making it up with the Excel marker. But then if you know what Chaos does, you don't really want, especially if they're a grade 3, you don't really want to call it to the front row because it might get you screwed over. So if you call it to the front row, yeah, you're losing an attack, but then this thing's not a 20k and they don't get a draw. But if you call it to the back row, yeah, you keep the attack, but they get a 20k out of it and a draw. So you kind of got to debate on that. And I'm saying 20k as in the base power that it will have, not it gets +20. And then it continues to be regarded if your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater and they have a locked card, the original critical of all your Vanguards becomes 2. Cool, so Force 2 on Vanguard. And this is the reason why you don't run a Force 2 in this deck, because you could give it to the rear guards, but Chaos makes gifts way too fast to the point where you don't need to give it to the rear guards. I mean, now with Blazing Flare running around, you might want to give it Force 2, just cuz, but yeah, Zirconium is one of the best Star-vader cards in my opinion. Like, it's a free extra critical, and the best part is, this was before Bushy decided, oh wait, yeah, front or rear guard circle would definitely make everything less broken, which means you can just shove this to the back row, they can't swing into it, and your Vanguard's a permanent +2 crit. I mean, +1 crit, so Zirconium is really good. I do give him a 4 of, because he gets you a free lock, or not a free lock, but he gets you a lock that can possibly get you a draw and a 10 out of it, and he can make your Vanguard double critical base, so cool. Next up, we have Star-vader Colony Maker. Grade 2, intercept, 5k shield, 10k base. The thing I abuse the shit out of. Auto, when it's placed on Vanner rear, Soul Blast 1, discard a card from your hand. Look at top 5, choose up to 1 Star-vader from among them, call it as rest, and shuffle your deck. If your opponent has a locked card, call it a stand. So it's regardless of what grade they're at, you can call that card a stand as long as they have a locked card, which is really nice because you can combine with Zirconium over here. And it's only a Soul Blast and discard, which is fine because you can actually use that to set up by discarding this into your drop zone. And then because you're using Soul, this can call itself out for free. And not to mention that it doesn't have to be placed from hand for that to go off, so you can call 1 from hand or ride 1 from hand, then use its skill, look at top 5, oh hey, another Colony Maker, call Colony Maker, use that Colony Maker, Soul Boss 1, discard another one, look at top 5, oh, it's another Colony Maker, okay, I'll call another Colony Maker, if you somehow have more Soul Boss 1, discard again, look at top 5, oh, another Colony Maker, okay, now it's starting to get unbelievable, but if you have more Soul and more hand left, then you can keep doing it, but yeah, for Colony Maker, she effectively gets you aboard for what now is classified as a benefit thanks to these 2. I know you couldn't see it, but I was using air quotes around the word benefit. Even then, Colony Maker is still a good card and definitely one of my favorite field spammers, 4 of. On to grade 3s, baby. 3 copies of Star-vader, Nebula, Lord Dragon. Grade 3, Twin Drive, Force Gift, 13k base. Act Vanguard once per turn. Soul Boss 1 and retire another rear guard. Retire a rear guard of Star-vader's card name. Your opponent chooses one of their rear guards, locks it. Then if your opponent has no back row rear guards, which means all their back rows either locked or they have no rear guards to begin with, and this unit gets +1 drive for the turn. If no cards were locked, your opponent looks at the top card of their deck and puts on an open rear guard circle as a locked card. So, regardless if they lock or not, you get a drive. Because presumably, if they didn't lock, that either means the unit has resist, or all their back row is locked and or doesn't have a back row to begin with, so you get an extra drive. But then if they didn't actually lock, you get to call the top card of the deck as a locked card, so unless their full board is locked, they're getting screwed over by this, which is really nice. It continues Vanguard during your turn. If your opponent's Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater, all your units with Star-vader in their card and get +5 for each of your opponent's locked cards. Now, let me be clear. That says all units, not front row. All. As long as they have Star-vader. So this is where this becomes the weak link of the deck, because outside of the early game, this is effectively useless. But at the same time, I'm not running this bastard at 4. So, Nebula Lord buffs the field to a huge extent once they get to grade 3, and can just get your triple drive really easily. If only Colony Maker didn't use up so much soul. 3 copies of Nebula. I would run him at 4, I really would, but if you knew me, you would understand how much I spam Colony Maker, and I will not stop spamming Colony Maker and Raid on here, who could be slightly detrimental to you if you don't have 1 or less soul. So I do run him at 3, but he is still a really good grade 3, and you can build a deck around him. 3 copies of Star-vader, Infinite Zero Dragon, grade 3, Twin Drive, Force Gift, 13k base, auto when it's placed on Vanguard or wrote upon, counterblast 1, discard a card from your hand, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and lock it, and then if your damage zone has 4 or more cards, choose an opponent's front row and back row rear guard instead of 1. So, before it's counterblast 1, discard 1, lock anything, but now if you ride upon it, you can lock 1 in each row. So, it is better. So, you can do triangle formation. If you don't know what that is, that means, say, for example, these are like a field. Sorry for the bad image. Like, you lock this one in the front row right here, then you lock this one, and then you use your next lock to lock this one, and then only the Vanguard can swing, and the back row 2 don't matter unless they can swing from back row. So, really easy to pull off. And continues Vanguard rear guard during your turn, and this unit gets +5 for each of your opponent's locked cards. So, basically, what this is, except this doesn't require them to be at grade 3, and it only applies to itself. Either way, Infinite Zero's good. It's definitely regardless if you choose to run Chaos or not in this deck, this is something you want to run because it has the Break Ride skill, so it's useful when it's placed and when it's wrote upon. It still gets power to itself, and it can get bigger power than Chaos can, and it can lock multiple units at once. I do give it a 3 in this build because I do still focus on Chaos, and Chaos is my personal main grade 3 because I do like it. In terms of most of the Star-vaders, it is my favorite one. But I would definitely say if you didn't want to run Chaos in this build, run both of these at 4 and then take the 2 extra copies that come from Chaos and tech this up by 4. Or tech this up to 4. So that's what you could do if you don't want to run Chaos, but I do choose to run Chaos. So what Chaos is at 4, obviously. So Star-vader, Chaos Breaker Dragon, grade 3, Twin Drive, no gift, 13k base. Continues Vanguard rear guard during your opponent's turn during your turn, not your opponent's turn. If you have a locked card, if your opponent has a locked card, this unit gets +10. So it's a 23k, really easy. It can get more base power out of Infinite Zero because it just requires 1. But Infinite Zero, if you get the 2 off, it becomes a 23 as well. And then it has the potential to get more power. And then act Vanguard once per turn for Chaos. Counterblast 1, your opponent gets a Force Gift, and then you choose one of your opponent's rear guards and lock it. So, they get to pick Force 1 or Force 2, but then after that, they have to stick with that one. So if they picked Force 1 the first time, they got to keep picking Force 1. But it's a way just to lock a rear guard. So, and the good news is they get the gift first, which means if they give the gift to a rear guard, just lock the circle the Force 1 went to. It's not that hard. I don't know why. I think I saw someone complain before, Chaos is bad because it gives your opponent a Force Gift. If they give it to anywhere that isn't the Vanguard, if it has a unit on that circle, you could just go lock that circle, boom, the Force Gift was effectively useless. They're either forced to put it on an open rear guard circle that might get locked over by things like this thing, which requires them to call it an open rear guard circle, or it could just go to Vanguard, but then, PGs are a thing, so Chaos wasn't really that bad. And then Auto Van, when your opponent's lock card is unlocked, regardless of whose turn it is. So Boss 1, retire one of those unlocked units, you draw a card, then your opponent removes a total of 2 markers from their circle or hand and you get an imaginary gift force for each marker removed from both. So, you know, if they remove, so you're guaranteed to give them 1, then if they rode first, then, you know, they got 2. You can use Chaos, lock a unit, and then proceed to not wait for your opponent's turn to come by, and then just use Craving Claw, unlock that unit, relock something else, and then use Chaos skill, Soul Blast for the Craving Claw that just went to Soul, draw your card, kill the force marker and kill their other marker, and you get 2 force gifts. You can either get Force 1 or Force 2. And that's what Chaos does, so pretty good. You get your gifts really quickly, actually, especially if you play it right. He gives your opponent a gift and proceeds to take it away, and then he can get a decent amount of power out of it. Once more, if you don't want Chaos, you don't have to run it. You can run these two. Having the 2, I know all of them are dragons, but for some reason these 2 feel more dragon than Chaos Breaker. I don't know why, but you could definitely run the 2 Dragon Boys over here and then run, or not run Chaos at all. But I do think Chaos does deserve a place in the deck. It was definitely like the leading Star-vader back into V. It's not too broken, it's not too bad. I mean, people can make it broken, but people can make anything broken. Let's all be fair. Some deck could be really not broken, and then people will make it broken. So I run Chaos at 4 because he's not that bad. And then we have our gifts. A Force 1, A Force 2. Here's why. You need to provide your opponent with gifts. Even if you're going to take them right back, you still have to have enough gifts to provide them with it. So Force 1 and Force 2, they're slightly similar, where they both go on a Vanguard or Rearguard circle. Difference is Force 1, the unit on that circle gets +10, and it can be stacked. So, you know, if you have 1 on a circle, the unit gets a +10. If you have 3 on the same circle, +30. If you have 6 on the same circle, +60. And Force 2, it can still be placed on the same circle, but you can't stack it because it says the original critical becomes 2. So even if you had 2 on the same circle, your critical doesn't become 3 because it's not +1 critical. Its original critical becomes 2. So even if you had 2, the critical is still 2, not 3. So, you know, you use this one if you're trying to kill your opponent quickly, but if you want the one that's gonna, you know your opponent's gonna stall out for the long game, or you think that you're just gonna want that power on everyone more because maybe Nebula's not gonna show up, then go for Force 1. I mean, in my personal opinion, Force 1 is better, but if you know your opponent's like a power deck that will kill you quickly, like for example, Dauntless. Dauntless is a perfect example of this. Run Force 2, immediately go for the kill. Do not trust Dauntless. They can impossibly undo to pass everything, unless it's not a PG. So, yeah, you're going to want to Force 2 against things like Dauntless, but otherwise Force 1 is probably the way to go. And then we have our Quick Shield, which is more immediate attack, 6 plus 5k for the battle. Just a standard Quick Shield. I was going to say something smart about it, but it's not. It's just a 5k shield. You would only use for discard fodder of things like Infinite Zero over here and PGs. So, yeah. And Colony Maker. And that's the deck. So, hope you guys enjoyed. All around, Star-vaders, they're fine. Yeah, they're a fun deck. They're not super controlling. That's what I hated about Star-vaders before. I love the idea behind a lot of control decks, except what I hate about them is like there's the control deck aspect. Like they never let your opponent play, or like the early stages of them do, but then the later stages when they get in their final forms, God, it's like so boring both playing as them and playing against them, just because like you / your opponent never get to do anything and you're playing the same loop over and over and over again. Even if you spice it up and do something slightly different, you're not really doing something different, you're just changing the way of how you did something. But like Chaos, it definitely, like, back in, now that it's in V, they toned it down a bit, which is really nice. It's a fun deck to play again for me, and it's a nice deck all around. And then Ezreal gave it the big middle finger by saying odd abilities cannot activate over your opponent's Vanguard, which means Chaos gets screwed over by this. But yeah, the deck is still fun. So for all you Star-vader players, don't worry, people. Glendios might be coming. I'm not so sure if Glendios is actually coming, but Glendios might be coming in set 5 and 6, and maybe you will reclaim your glory against the reverse decks. I don't really know. So if you guys enjoyed, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, donate to the Patreon, join Discord, follow the Twitch, and I'll see you on the next one. Don't forget to stand up your Vanguards.